Welcome to Emotional Sobriety, the next step in recovery, with Dr. Alan Berger and Thom Rutledge. Oh, I was so frustrated yesterday. I had couples therapy, and my internet started to take a shit while I was in the middle of explaining some very emotional points. And hopefully that my internet won't have trouble today. But yeah, don't you hate it when that happens, when like somehow the speed starts throttling when like you're in the middle of
Well, yeah, I mean, if it was if I was in couples therapy, it wouldn't bother me because couples therapy, sucks by definition.
It's
like
tricky.
nobody, I always say no self-respecting man wants to go to couples therapy. It's dangerous. So, I think you should just fake like your internet goes out if it gets bad.
I was making the mistake. I caught myself in therapy yesterday. Sometimes it can get into it's almost like a recitation of like, I don't know, just I felt like I was trying to look too good at a certain point, like where I was trying to like, like I was auditioning for like, another thing. Yeah.
Another wonderful thing about me is.
So you've got some reading for us today, Alan. I'm excited to see what you got.
Well, listen, let's start by just kind of getting centered to all of the social upheaval that's going on in our nation right now. I experienced as an adolescent the civil rights movement that happened, and the big march in Chicago down Milwaukee Avenue with Martin Luther King. And later on, as the Vietnam War started to heat up and we got more and more involved in the protest against our involvement over there. And, I think it's one of the things that's so great about our nation is our freedom of speech, is our First Amendment right. And I just applaud all those that are willing to stand up and speak their mind, whichever way you go, whether you are right or left or middle, it doesn't matter to me. This country gives you the right to do so. And it's freedom now.
Well, and so the other thing we're saying is you use that right, but also the other piece is it does have a bit of I think, an appropriate should to it, which is respect other people's rights to do that. It's like everybody, if somebody disagrees with you, it does not mean they don't have a right to speak. It just doesn't. It's and I might I started to say I might like that if it was the case, but I wouldn't like it because I understand the concept. We say always in emotional sobriety, respect does not necessarily mean agreement. Very often it doesn't mean agreement. It's almost like respect is needed more when we're not agreeing. And it just means that we really understand I'm a separate human being from you. And you have your rights, I have mine.
I'm in Los Angeles, which you guys have been hearing about in the news, I'm sure, recently.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Donald.
Yeah, it's oh God, yeah. I donated some money yesterday because I wasn't able to get to a protest last weekend.
Oh, you're not going to go today, No King's Day? I think that's an amazing thing that's happening this weekend. Last night I went on the Zoom call last night when they were talking about organizing this and the spirit and energy of it. And now at this point in time last night, they had 1,900 different locations where people are going to go out and protest.
Wow. Good.
1,000. I don't think they had that.
Different locations. You're talking about no telling how many people in each one of those locations.
It's going to be millions of people are going to be out on the streets protesting this thing. And this is how we're going to turn this thing around. This is power to the people, man.
I guess that's a way to try and look at it positively, is the groundswell of opposition, because, I just like all the the ICE stuff and just sending Marines and National Guard into a city to essentially round up Mexicans at a Home Depot is just like such an insult and a transgression. And like I feel like even if you're conservative, even if you should take issue with the illegality and the just I don't know, just the brutality and awfulness of
Yeah,
like
but
this, action.
I mean, for since the 2016 thing, every step of the way, I've said, well, I don't say it anymore, but well, this ought to do it. I mean, even conservatives will do this. It's like, but I mean, it's like, I mean,
Well, I say should, you know what I mean? I know what you mean. Like,
yeah, but I mean, it's like, I mean, but it wouldn't, well, but originally I was thinking that there would be a place where I was, and when Donald Trump was first elected in 2016, I was in constant correspondence with my two senators, with Corker and Lamar Alexander here, and it's like, and both of whom I have had a lot of respect for, and it's like, and and the way they responded to the whole thing is just wimping out and then getting out of the Senate. It's like running. It's like I don't understand. I can't understand. I mean, I've lost jobs on more than one occasion because I just stood up for something that was wrong. Just no. I mean, I didn't do a good job of it. I was kind of a hothead. I was a hothead, and but the things I stood up for were right. It's like I wasn't. I would not change what I did. I would change how I did it. But it's like, but I mean, I've lost jobs for doing that. I've quit jobs because they wouldn't change things. It's like, and I'm going like, aren't there no people out there? I mean. I'm not that great a guy. It's like, I mean, there should be more of those people working in our government. Some of these people, I mean, I see people that I disagree with a lot, but like I look at Rubio and all these guys, it's like, oh my God, this, and even with I just want to say this one more thing, even with their ego stuff, I'm going like, you dumbass, this is an opportunity for you personally to go down in history in a really positive light. Why won't you do it? It's like you're going to go down in history as, one of Hitler's flunkies. It's like, but you could stand up and, I mean, how many of us would be behind any of those people that decided to stand up and say, look, I've been wrong. I have let this go too long. I have been wrong and we need to change this. It's like that person would be a national hero.
See, Thom, you're right. I mean, I hear you, man. And listen, that is one of the problems with the human condition. How many times have we seen people follow despots like this that are doing terrible things? Hitler, I mean, there was so many of these people that were supporting Hitler's agenda and that agreed with him. And we got the same thing, man. These people that are so seduced by power and drunk, they're power drunk. That's what's going on.
You only get in the room, like the only way that you stay in the room is by acquiescing, to.
Well, when you say that, it's like, it's interesting because when I think about that in terms of what I'm saying, I wish they would do that and forget about it being altruistic or the right thing to do, but just if you want to get the best book deal, I mean, bottom line is any of these people, they do that one time and they have $1 zillion book deal.
I know, but see, that's a future thing, and they're into now. Right now, the king has touched their head and put them in a position. Marco Rubio, what did he used to say about Trump?
Oh, all kinds of horrible things. I mean, he was ruthless with him. It's like
what did Vance say about Trump?
Vance literally called him Hitler at one point.
Yeah.
I think if there's a groundswelling enough, and that's why I think what's happening Saturday is so good. It needs to stay peaceful to not give him any more.
Oh God, yes, please.
To send more troops. I mean, what he's done in LA it's a test, man. He's testing what's possible. He's fired anybody that would challenge him in the administration. He's gotten rid of.
They can't abandon the pretense of liberal democracy, though they kind of are right now. But I mean, that's been kind of like the veil that's been keeping things running to some extent. Is to not want to have the appearance of being despotic, but that seems to be going away.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, military parade on Sunday. It's really going to be interesting. I just saw a thing, he fired the chairman of the Kennedy Center.
Yeah.
president, right? He took over, right? He took over.
Yeah, he gonna run it. Yeah.
He got all the people on the board. He nominated to the board. He put on the board himself. And so they're going to do a production of Les Miserables tonight for him. This is the president's night.
Oh yeah, he loves show tunes. Yeah.
Yeah, Patrick, I can see that you're very despondent about all this, though, huh?
Immigrants are very much a part of my community, and especially in Los Angeles. You know, they are of us. You know, documented, undocumented, and I feel wounded when you know these. I don't even want to call them police. They're, you know, commandos with masks that come into our schools, that come into, you know, our places of business and abduct people without trial, and, you know, to take them to God knows where. I love these people, and it's just it's wrong what's being done.
That's right on. And I even know many immigrants, and they all support the idea that if somebody's here and abusing their privilege to be in our country, they should be deported if they're a criminal.
Right.
I mean, no one would disagree with that. And, you know, that's what we would all hope for, is that we could somehow monitor and regulate the presence of people that want to be in this country and contribute to this great country and be a part of it. And if you don't, and you don't belong here, then goodbye. And I'm all for that policy. But
Right. The approach you're talking about is well, you know, rational problem solving. Continue to do this even in these circumstances, and to come from love. It's like because to not do that, you're not part of the solution. You're part of the problem.
just to put it into context, I'm going to read a paragraph or so from Escape from Freedom by Eric Fromme, and we'll talk about it.
Oh, I would love that. Yeah.
Hold it. Wait, let me get emotionally sober after this conversation.
I know, no shit. Eric Fromme was a very unique analyst. He was one of the many at that point in time. I include him with people like Karen Horney, who, unlike Freud was so focused on what was going on within an individual that he lost a sense of the impact that context, right, that society, that culture has on an individual and their functioning.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of zoomed out and at the same time zoomed in. I mean, it was a kind of an amazing thing, like Karen Horney did. I mean, she talked about that force of wanting to be loved and accepted being such a powerful force in shaping our personality and how we adapt to the anxiety that creates when we believe that we're not going to be loved and accepted. And Eric Fromme sees this from a very similar perspective. And in this part of the book that I'm reading, Escape from Freedom, he talks about that there's two concepts of health. He says one, health is defined in large in our culture as a successful adaptation to our society. Is that we work, we accept the role of our work, we're productive in our work, that we fulfill all the roles that society has given us, right?
That's a tough one.
And right, well, and he challenges that. He says, and then the other definition of health is the individual person's definition of health. So listen to how he talks about it. Now, he's going to use the word neurotic. So let me describe that and define that, because you tend to use that today in psychology and in psychiatry. That word has been replaced with anxiety. So if you just think about the neurotic person as a person who's anxious and filled with conflict, okay? Just think about it. So if you hear me say neurotic, what are you going to think? Anxious and conflicted. So he goes, if we differentiate the two concepts of normal and neurotic, the way I've defined them right now, come to the following conclusion. The person who is normal in terms of being well adapted to our society is often less healthy than the neurotic person in terms of human values. I just take that in for a minute.
I love it. It already got me. Yeah.
Often he or she is well adapted. This is the person who's well adapted to society, right? Playing their roles being the person they think they should be, or as that Fritz calls, dedicating yourself to actualizing a concept of who you should be instead of actualizing your true self, right? Kind of a thing. So he goes, often he or she is well adapted at the expense of having given up his or herself in order to become more or less the person he or she believes he or she is expected to be. All genuine individuality and spontaneity may have been lost. On the other hand, the neurotic person, the anxious person, the conflicted person, can be characterized as somebody who was not ready to surrender completely in the battle for his self or herself. To be sure, his or her attempt to save his individuality or his individual self was not successful. And instead of expressing his self productively, he sought salvation through neurotic symptoms and by withdrawing into his fantasy life. Nevertheless, from the standpoint of human values, he is less crippled than the kind of a normal person who has lost his individuality altogether. Needless to say, there are persons who are not neurotic and yet have not drowned their individuality in the process of adaptation. But the stigma attached to the neurotic person seems to us to be unfounded and justified only if we think of neurotic in terms of social efficiency. So it's an incredible thing that he says. He talks about positive freedom, and this is what we would call emotional sobriety. It says the person can relate to himself spontaneously to the world in love and work, in the genuine expression of his emotional, sensuous, and intellectual capacities. He can thus become one again with man, nature, and himself, without giving up the independence and integrity of his individual self. That's emotional sobriety.
Yeah, absolutely. That is powerful.
Oh, this man's writing in his insight into the human condition and human suffering is unparalleled, I think. And
it's beyond psychology. That's philosophy. I mean, that's deeper. Yeah.
That's what he's able to really do, Thom, well. And I think, I bring this up because I want to remind everybody that emotional sobriety, first of all, stands on the shoulders of a lot more people than Bill Wilson.
Yeah, yes.
Bill Wilson is one of the people that I think has created this concept of emotional sobriety. But what we hear from people like Eric Fromme or Fritz Perls or Karen Horney or Nathaniel Brandon, Thom Rutledge, Dr. Berger, I mean, all of
Marcus Aurelius. I'll go all the way back to the Stoics that I study. Yeah, absolutely.
What we're capturing here, I want people to hear this. We're talking about the human condition. That's why people, when they relate to this stuff, say, and Bill even said it, he says, I think this way of life is for everyone, because we're not talking about something that's unique, right? We're not unique, those of us that are in recovery. I mean, we are special, but we're not unique. I mean, or we're unique, right, but we're not special. Maybe a better way to say it. Because each one of us, there's never going to be another person like me in this world. There's never going to be another Patrick, never going to be another Thom Rutledge. Some of you may be saying, thank God to all three of them.
I knew that was coming. There was a little bit too much of a pause after that one.
The important thing here is finding a way to be able to cooperate and not lose ourselves. To be able to be in relationship to, but keep a sense of ourselves and not get lost. Either one way or the other, by bringing in too much self and too little other, or too much other and too little self. I mean, we either emphasize the we or the I. In between the two, we get lost. And see, really being integrated in the way that Eric Fromme is talking about is being able to honor ourselves, as Nathaniel Brandon says. What that means is to honor the part of us that wants to togetherness and union and joining, but also to honor our desire to be separate in our own person. And that in this culture and in many cultures is an enormous challenge, because the pressure is to give yourself up to one of those or the other. In our society, look, this society is based on individuality. The Declaration of Independence was saying nobody's going to tell me what to do. Don't tread on me. That was the old sign, right? Don't tread on me. So we're really good at, saying, hey, I am me, and, you have no right telling me what to do. But we're not great at the other side of that equation, is learning how to cooperate. As you just said, Patrick, when you're describing the terrible thing that's going on, it's a total discounting of the other person and treating them as an object, not as a person, as a subject. It makes you sad. I see your sadness about all this today. I'm very struck by how moved you are.
Yeah, well, I am for sure. And just to clarify, some of the quote that you read, what it's describing, or what we would call emotional sobriety, it's being a part of the world and submitting yourself, to kind of like these social forces, but also kind of keeping a foot outside of it, or reserving a space that's only for yourself. Is there something like that? It's living in the middle with that doubleness.
Yeah, it's you're close to that. I don't know if it's saying submitting to. It would be more of
Cooperating.
yeah, it'd be more of taking it into account and seeing what it means to you, and finding a way, as Thom just brought up, to cooperate without losing yourself. Now, it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, I
No, it's
keep
a balance, and it's what emotional sobriety is. What addiction recovery is. It's another tenet of this whole thing is balance. It's like and because if you think about balance, I always think about the tight wire walker. It's like they're never still. If you look at them carefully, they're moving constantly. Their intuition in their whole body is telling them how to keep going. We do it when we drive our car. Nobody just holds the steering wheel straight. You're constantly at the deeper level doing that. And what I wrote down when you were talking about that, Alan, was to be a part of but not lost in. It's like you don't give yourself up.
Well, yeah. Right. And I'll use just a couple metaphors, or maybe bring some examples in. And, we were talking about protest earlier. And we were talking about, our righteous anger as citizens. And I feel like that the way that I remain a citizen, or the way that I remain a part of in this American fabric, is by speaking up when something's wrong, or when there's an injustice that's committed against, from the top to the bottom. But then I'll bring in another example. That quote made me think of, I have a sponsee, and he's a great guy, and he's really starting to get some sober time, but he struggles with, like a lot of us, with work and finding a job, that's right for him, and finding a place where he can be gainfully employed, but also like belong. And I suppose like that reading just made me think about like, there would be a value in the long term, and I'm probably going to talk to him about it. And like seeing, finding the job, finding some kind of, regular employment as being as a way of him really like belonging and participating and satisfying the side of that equation, right, where you're kind of in cohesion with the world around you. And I think I can kind of understand now why he's been at a little bit of an impasse, because he's tried some jobs recently and they haven't taken, or he hasn't really kind of found his groove with it. And I think that's related somewhat, to some of his other struggles and recovery. It's feeling a part of. So am I on the right track? Is this kind of like related somewhat to what you guys are talking about?
Right. Well, yeah. See, I think what you're talking about with him, like your friend, is he doesn't know. I don't know him, so I'm just imagining right now what you're talking about. But see, our ability, and I think you were getting to this when you talk about submit to society. part of this society is run by capitalism. We need to earn a living if we're going to be a part of it, right? I mean, there are social programs and stuff, but they're not adequate in terms of being able to support someone in living in most areas in this country at this.
Mm-hmm.
So our culture is based on our individual efforts to create our existence. Now, the promise is it's unlimited. We all know that's a myth.
Mm-hmm.
We know that that's a myth. It's the promise you can do anything you want if you put your mind to it. Well, I'd like to win Wimbledon. Good luck. I mean, especially at my age, I think, and even when I was younger, I don't think that I would, no matter what I willed myself to do, I would have been able to do that. So I love the idea that your mind is powerful, but it's also a thing of balancing, right? Being realistic in terms of it, right? And stuff like that. So, adaptation, being able to somehow be in this world and do a job and not lose yourself in the job, but use that job to be able to enhance your experience in your life and take care of your family. That is a healthy person that can adapt in that way. But we're defining it now as being able to adapt to society without losing yourself. Right. See, that's the thing. And so if we fall out of one side of the bed, to be successful means I totally lose myself and become what this society wants me to be. That's going to be a problem. If I fall out of the other side of bed, screw this society, I'm going to be an anarchist in my own person. I'll move up into the Appalachian Mountains and live off the land. Okay, well, go ahead. There's places you can go and do that. But see, either side of it is falling out of bed. What Thom said is it's a balance.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And let me say this about, and again, the disclaimer is that neither Alan and I know the guy you're talking about, but so we got the concept. But I'm speaking in experience, strength, and hope. It's like the idea of finding something that's going to work for me as I work through that stuff. For me, the challenge, and it was an ego challenge, because for having low self-esteem. Lots of it, as you guys know, is like, boy, I was an arrogant son of a bitch. It's like, and I'm not alone in that. A lot, that's because arrogance is not actual confidence. It's like, but the idea is, I could be in a position like your sponsee is there, and it would be like, would get me in trouble was you can't tell me what to do. I had such a strong reflex with that. You can't tell me what to do. I mean, it doesn't mean in the circumstance. There are you still really kind of can't tell me what to do unless it makes sense. I think that's where I've become more healthy. Because you can tell me things and I can go, I don't like that idea. And then you can talk for a while and I can go, oh shit, you're right. I got to do that. But it's like back in the old days when I was younger and early in recovery, I didn't have that. I mean, it was like I was so easy. And we've been talking about being offended by reality, Alan. It's like I was so easily offended that basically I was a hair trigger. It's like anything would piss me off. I would storm out of any job or any situation because it wasn't going my way. So I don't know if that's part of the balance.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm the last person you want to talk to about satisfying the imperatives of capitalism. But I'm very pro survival, and I'm very pro, finding some way to have solidarity with other people. And, I love the 12-step room so much because they're kind of like a capitalism hack. It's like they find a way to get everybody out of their little silos and together in a room where they're like communing with each other.
By the way, let's just pause for a minute because that's a beautiful thing to say. That's a beautiful thing to see. You see it in Los Angeles, I know. I mean, I see it in Nashville. One of the things we've often said is, first of all, but in Nashville, by the way people dress, you cannot tell how much money that we have because the richest person in the room is not dressed well. It's like, but you could be sitting there for that hour while you're there, and you could have the biggest country music star or the biggest music star of any kind sitting right there next to the homeless guy, and they're the same. And it's really, it's legitimate and it's beautiful. And it's a model we need to expand.
Thanks for coming on. I met you 2 years ago at in London at the Recovery Reimagined conference. It was still called Recovery Reimagined back then, right? They didn't rebrand it or anything. Yeah. Um, but it was so cool that I don't know. Every time I meet like somebody else who listens to the show, I'm a little bit surprised because it always feels like we're sending these messages in a bottle out into the ether, and it was just nice to hear from you and like being like politically active or interested in recovery spaces is a little bit weird because you want to create that solidarity and that group consciousness or conscience with, and you don't want to exclude people that believe differently than you do. So it's a little bit of a third rail. I found like I've been sober for about 7 years, and from the beginning, because I my sobriety dates in 2018, which is 2 years after Trump came into office, which was like a radicalizing moment for a lot of us. Other people were cool before that, but I was not. And anyway, yeah. So from the jump, pretty much, I was stressed out all the time about what was on the news, and but I had to do what it took to stay sane and stay sober. And but I suppose I just never wanted to give up my beliefs, never wanted to stop caring about the state of the world, and and so I suppose it's like recovery for me has been being pulled between these two forces. You know what I mean? The force of just chill out or just stay grounded, focus on what you can, change what you can, release what you can't. But then also kind of having being in touch with and caring about, like social justice and like these larger forces that a lot of our political stress kind of emanates from. And so that's me anyway. But like when we met, you had mentioned that you appreciated that occasionally we will dip into politics on emotional sobriety, and that was very made me feel really good to feel seen like that because I try, here and there. I don't want to like get too into the weeds, but can you tell me? I mean, I kind of just went on a tangent about myself just now. Like, how did tell me first? How did you decide to go to that event last in London? Like how'd you get involved in these spaces?
Thank you. And you let me know if my image comes through or my audio, basically. Yeah, thank you, Patrick. First of all, thank you. Yes, thank you so much for all the work, the recording, your sobriety, your recovery, your experience, strength, and hope. The work that you do, archiving all of this, because it's such a treasure for me, and I know for many hundreds of people. I've heard it at least every Thursday, Pacific time in the evening. But I went to the Recovery Imagine because I came to my own beginnings of recovery, or to the 12-step program, through the gates of Al-Anon. And I always felt there was something wrong with me, or my environment. And or I'll say something off with me in my environment. And so I knew about Al-Anon when I was 14 years old, and I never went to it until I was 26, when I felt I was sort of out of control, just my mind obsessed. And so that was my beginning journey. And then it took 15 years into recovery, 15 years, when I started to do the steps with Herb in Culver City in LA County, and through the Big Book. And he introduced this letter emotional sobriety, the next frontier. And I remember he showed us a video of Dr. Allen and Herb himself discussing an old video. And I thought, oh, this is why I'm here. Not for this, for that, the little trophies that sometimes we get distracted with in recovery. Like, I'm gonna get someone sober, or I'm gonna make a lot of money, or I'm gonna get a boyfriend and a husband, or it's like, it's not that. We get many people get distracted, I believe, but it's like, for me, it's like, I just wanna be detached. I'm so attached to everything. I don't like who I am. I've never accepted myself. I've never accepted my circumstances, and so I fought. Like it says in that letter. So I was so excited about actually seeing Herb, because I felt like Herb for a while, and I think still he's like sort of like my spiritual teacher for sure, even though I'm not an alcoholic. But I really had a huge awakening through the step work that he does. And when we were in the first election of this person, of this president, I was doing the 4th step inventory the way he does it. So it was.
You had a lot to write down.
Ooh. I was angry at the people who voted for him, the people who didn't vote, the people who didn't care. I could not vote. So I was like, I'm depending on people to be conscious so that I can be saved, so that I can be okay. Can you hear that?
Yeah, you needed some help.
I mean, to me, it is recovery, what's happening in the streets, what I can see from the streets. I mean, from some people I respect who are recording what's going on, documenting. I mean, that to me is a version of recovery. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah. Well, before we just chat a little bit about that, like, so what hit you about emotional sobriety is that it is that you became aware of all of these expectations and demands you were putting on, the people in your
Mhm.
inner circle and on the world, right? And on
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah. And that it was that realization, right? That like if you could find a way to let those go, that you could actually have some freedom of movement in this world.
I've always wanted to be free. I think that's a right where humans want to be free. Humans want to belong. Um, it's not a luxury. It's something that we desire, I believe. I think it's healthy, I mean, and I always felt like I was tied to something, right? Like, I have to be such and such person so that I am okay. That's not freedom. That's being a slave, being in a prison, or I have to have this and that, or my boss has to approve of me. You know what I'm saying? So it's always like the outside demanding who I am. I'm like, I was like, no self, I had no self. I mean, I'm building that self, I believe. Like, who is that real, who really is that person, that person who like really thinks for herself and really looks after herself, and like, what does she want? I think I'm just beginning to sort of work on that. Many, over 2 decades in recovery. I think it's okay. I don't want to judge myself, but it takes a long time.
Yeah, it sure does. So like how were you defining yourself before you really started doing the work? And then how does that compare to where you are today?
I don't know how I was defining myself, but I think, we grow up in certain environments, and well, and I came to believe some things that I needed to get done so that I could be successful, or that I could be liked or something. And then at the same time, my mind told me, I don't care if no one likes me. I don't care if I don't succeed. But of course I do, right? Because it's like Dr. Allen says, the oak is here to be an oak tree, right? So it's always, that evolution. Um, so then I could see my lies. I could see, for instance, it's so hard still for me to say no, like a real no or like a real yes, like because there's that self is being built or created or resuscitated or dug out from the underneath of the false self that I was told to be, just to go through life. So for me, a lot of it, for instance, is just um, think, think, come up with solutions, fix the situation, think, and then you can go after your dreams, and then you'll have a vacation, and then. So always putting off life, or even like, do I need to go to the bathroom? Do I need to eat? Am I hungry? Like even basic things like that. I don't know if this makes sense.
With Herb, because Herb was your mentor, is your mentor. Like what resonated with me whenever I would watch him is that he's always talking about getting into that alignment with reality. Me, from the alcoholic side of the spectrum, we fall into delusions so easily, and we don't do a good job of seeing reality. And so that's why these programs can be so helpful. And with you,
I think
it's something similar, right?
I think all of us, because I may not be, a substance whatever dependent or an alcoholic or a drug addict, but I have other types of drugs that still keep me in the delusion and then like, well, maybe tomorrow, okay, this is the last time, for real, this is the last time. Or like, it's okay, it's not that bad. That's delusion. That's a form of dishonesty. It's just being separated from the self. I remember once I was in the workshop with Herb and I did this sign, like I did this, like this. Herb, what does this look like? And he didn't get it. It's fine. But I thought it's the pause. When we used to have radios and
Oh,
there,
yeah, the pause symbol. Yeah, that's what it looks like.
and I did this, and he was like, I don't know what you mean. And I was like, the pause. And then I thought, that's it. I need to pause and then like sit in, which is really hard, sit with myself, like what is really going on versus just like, let me fix it. This is too uncomfortable. It is my job to fix it or change it.
Yeah, so Al-Anon, what led you to Al-Anon? So were there friends and family who had alcoholism that you were like trying to, you know, heal from?
Yeah, I mean, my father drinks, or he drank when I was growing up, and so there were a lot of problems all the time. And I feel for me, my mother's reactions were more impactful because she was around all the time with us. So there's like more contamination, you know what I'm saying? It's like more germs going around when you have a longer, period of time with a specific, you know, germ. I'm gonna call it a germ, or like, a condition or a situation. So, but there was this message like he's the problem, which maybe that is true or not. I'm not gonna get into that. It maybe doesn't matter, but just being around, like too much information that was inappropriate, tasks or responsibilities that were inappropriate. And so I had heard about Al-Anon actually through her. And then I was a teenager. I never went. They had split up by the time. Um, and then I left. I went to the US as a teenager. So I never came back until recently. Like when you and I met in London, I had just gone back to Mexico after over 30 years. And so it was in LA that I found or chose to go to Al-Anon because I felt like my whole life something didn't match. Something was very unsettling. And the way it looked like for me was unknowingly repeating patterns and behaviors that I had done at home growing up as a teen, up until I was 16, 17, and then doing those at work or everywhere I go. Everywhere I go, I'm the same person. I wanna, you know, and in my case, it was workaholism. And Al-Anon has a text that says something like, "We seek to forget the past through heavy workloads," and is the adult child perspective on the Al-Anon. Maybe I don't drink, but I do a bunch of other things.
Yeah, you were trying to get out. You were trying to get away from yourself and to mask some things, right?
Because it's too painful, it's uncomfortable. I don't like feelings. I mean,
Oh, it sucks.
until
Yeah.
until 2018, after having done many steps and actually more than 2 programs that are all about codependency, that are all about this that I'm looking for, the emotional sobriety, peace. I was just becoming aware that I was a human and that I didn't want to be a human because humans have feelings. And I mean, I wasn't 12 years old. I was, you know, I was over 30 years old. You know what I'm saying? I've been anyway. So that was sort of like the reason I went into Al-Anon. I was allowing people to, no boundaries, couldn't speak up for myself, um, um, overextending, overworking, people pleasing, all those things that are not helpful.
Yeah.
And I thought those were solutions because that's all I knew.
So I was in a relationship where I was drinking quite a bit in the early 2010s, and my partner at the time, so I was an addict, and then her brother was an addict, and he was in and out of jail a lot, and then um, we'd broken up as a result of a lot of things, but the drinking was fundamental, just the reason for that dysfunction and my dysfunction as a person. But like she had started to going to Al-Anon on the sly, and I noticed there was a shift in her, and she just became very, there was like a confidence and like a self-love that she seemed to have, and also like she stopped trying to control what I was doing and more kind of, like detached in a loving way while I went wrestled with my stuff. And I didn't key into it until later, until I had some recovery and I started to meet some Al-Anons that like, she was getting some really like strong spiritual medicine that allowed her to, you know, survive the experience of myself and her brother,
Mhm.
and it's just a beautiful thing, and it educated me about like what they say it's a family disease, right? And the effects of addiction, you know what I mean? It's not just the addict, who suffers from them. It's everybody in their orbit. And yeah, I met a lot of OA and Al-Anon, and I met some Alateen people at Recovery Reimagined just now. And then at the last one it's been eye-opening because you see that it's like a widespread thing.
Yeah. Well, that's I'm hearing like, she began to have a self, which is really hard to have a self. I like, I'm gonna focus on myself. I'm gonna let this, in this case, you have your own experience, which is super hard. It's really hard. I mean, for me, it's just very, very hard. And but yeah, that is the thing. And I think that is emotional sobriety, right? I stay with me. In my case, is not even try to change myself, but just like it's the pause. It's like pause. No, 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 bringing up the past and not storytelling. It's just like it's here. I don't need to change myself right now. Just being with myself, which is very uncomfortable, right? And being in that center of gravity. I love that description because that also, I started to help myself during the pandemic with some somatic work, and they talk about the center, right? And for me, I was always like just thinking like from here to here, thinking, and like dismember, like no sensations, so that I could move through life, so that, 'cause what is my intuition? My heart is telling me this, my stomach is telling me this. It's like, no. I just need to come up with solutions to problems. And so that sort of integration is, I just love it because it connects me to that emotional sobriety. What is my center of gravity? Staying with me without trying to change me, at least in this very brief present moment, you know? And then so I can breathe, and it's also the set aside prayer. Help me set aside what I think I know. I know some stuff, but like, I don't have to bring my own old movie of how things are gonna be.
There's a writer in recovery that I really admire. I first learned about 12 steps through him like 20 years ago or something like that. It was like a long time before I even knew I was an addict. But every time before he sat down and wrote anything, he would do the set aside prayer and, to kind of clear the channel. And I always thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
I was going
Yeah.
to ask you about the walking. You did this post maybe like a year ago on Instagram, just about like all of your travels and stuff and the walking. And can you tell us about that, or like maybe the therapeutic value and like a
Of
life
walking.
of somewhat, yeah.
Yeah. So, after many years, I decided to leave LA for reasons of some of what is taking place today and just many other things. And so I walked for over a month on a pilgrimage, to sort of bring that pause from, like, hopefully, the old me, or a life or a chapter in my life, to then have I guess, a break, or have a bridge to a new life. And it was very beautiful. It was very intense. Friends of mine thought I was on vacation. It's not vacation. It's very hard to walk and be with yourself, because the demons are, like, the past is here. And also it's very spiritual, because it's just very simple. You just walk. That's all you need to really do. Walk yourself to the next point and heal your wounds, your blisters. Like, just keep it super simple so that you can walk again tomorrow, and feed yourself, and drink a lot of water, and take vitamins, and meet people, cook together maybe, find a bed, and do it again the next day. So I think it was just like the beginning of a new chapter for me, um, in a way, because, and also I realized I had a lot of expectations. I thought, when I'm walking, I'm gonna get the download, and the higher power is gonna tell me what my purpose in life is. And my purpose, I think, is just get a self.
Yeah, I always love that little saying, wherever you go, there you are. There's no escape. The only way out is through.
Yeah. And watching, I remember watching my mind, like, I was worried, like, where am I gonna live now? Like, why did I let go of my dishes, or like my books? I had such a beautiful library, and it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, just keep walking, like, where do I live? I live right now here on the walk. That's where I live.
Yeah.
Um, so it was just so interesting. It just like letting go of those, like cleansing, those things. And
Yeah.
also I learned that we don't need a lot to survive or to live. We don't need a lot. And that has helped me a lot, because I also was one of those people who holds on to things, not only mental things and ideas and all behaviors and all thoughts and judgments of me and others, but also things, like material
Stuff.
things.
Yeah. I my girlfriend is an attorney. She thinks very much in terms of spreadsheets and she plans like years ahead, and every dollar is, going into some reservoir to serve a purpose,
Yeah.
at a later date. And I'm much more provisional and one day at a time. I'm in recovery. It's one day at a time.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean that I'm not intentional and, that I don't believe in planning, to kind of, live a more functional life. But
Hmm.
um, but yeah, I can see how somebody who's not as crazy as me, you know what I mean, would find that a little strange, just the kind of
Yeah.
the one day at a time. Um,
But trusting. I'm hearing trust because that's what I'm learning. Because
yeah,
part of being in this impacted by this environment. I was impacted. I don't have to be impacted every single day. I still act out my conditioned behaviors or learn things to protect myself. But okay, that's good, that worked. And then what if I just trust in the greater energy, higher power, God, however we want to call them, him, her, the mystery or the universe, versus me. It's very hard for some of us. I mean, it takes decades. This is me speaking for myself. It takes decades to like release and like maybe I will trust. I don't have to have all these things that I think I should have to be okay. Because in reality, I am okay. I have water. I have a mouth. I can speak. I have food. I have the basics. It is okay. My judgment of what I don't have is what brings unmanageability into my life and makes me believe that I should fight or struggle or suffer or blame others or myself for my circumstances. So if I keep it simple, which is really hard, my life can be, it's more like, in that freedom that I want.
so you were telling me that you wish you could be in LA for some of this protest.
Yes. Well,
Maybe a part of you does.
a part of me, once I actually told my sponsor, um, and she said, Elizabeth, you did the right thing. It's good that you are gone. And then I told a colleague of mine, I used to be an organizer. So since 97, I became an organizer. And so for me, I was trying to liberate myself through politics. And I'm not talking about electoral politics. I'm talking about decolonizing my brain and letting go of the old beliefs, what I was told, about myself. Um, and so for me, the political and the spiritual are maybe one and the same. It's about values, it's about principles. And so for me, I began organizing when I was in high school, but then when I went to the US, I started organizing in various campaigns. And
Can you give us the geography here? Like, so you were born in Mexico and then you moved to LA.
I was born in Mexico City. And then when I was a baby, we went back to my parents' town in sort of like central Mexico, and a few hours west of Mexico City. And then when I was a teenager, I left my mom's house with her permission because I'm a good girl. Actually, she told me, "You can go. God bless you. Okay, bye. It was nice." So I left, and like many immigrants, I'll say like many immigrants, oh, I'm gonna go for 6 months. I'm gonna make money. I'm gonna send money to my mom, and I'll come back. And I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to go uh, to art school in Mexico City, and so I never went back. 30 years after. Uh, So I arrived to Hollywood, but most of my life in LA, I lived in many places, like many immigrants do. They keep rolling. You live with like 12 people in one house, because um. But most of my life, I lived in Koreatown, which I love. Koreatown was,
I used
I
to
mean,
live close.
LA
I
is,
used to live in West Adams.
yeah.
Yeah.
So LA is my home. I mean, I became I became a bus rider, an organizer, a worker, a student, an advocate, an adult, a parent, a woman in recovery in LA.
So we recorded an earlier part to this episode. I'm still editing it, but I was talking about, I had brought up how furious I was and despondent about like the actions of ICE and coming into these workplaces, coming into schools with unmarked vehicles, with IDs obscured and masks, and abducting people and you know brutalizing them, deporting them, and um, and Alan said something that kind of pissed me off about. Well, we're all open. We're open to talking about common sense immigration solutions. And I think it was well meant. I think that there's a media diet that a lot of Americans get, and people who vote Democrat, that kind of like it doesn't get very granular. You don't really think of things in terms of systems. And in fact, the where I'll be going out this weekend, there's this nationwide No Kings uh, rally. It's an anti-Trump rally. But for me, I think that it's important to highlight the actions of ICE and to kind of let people know that it's this systemic thing that's occurring, which has had bipartisan support up until this point. But this isn't like about immigration necessarily. It's about white supremacy, and it's about hurting brown people, and and I just feel like I just want to remind people of that with as little a platform as I have. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You know what I mean? Like immigrants are a part of our communities, and we want them here, and they contribute, on a human level, on an economic level. And I think that I don't even want to play their game, the game of the other side of kind of like, because if we were willing to meet them on that level and talk logistics, then we're kind of accepting that framework that like that there's an invasion, that there's a problem, that there's some that there's an element of infection that needs to be cut out. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's interesting because I've spoken with, I've had sponsors who have similar ideas, and it's very disappointing because I want them to be radical and to be like with the people, and that's why I was talking about the political is spiritual for me, because it's on principle, but also everyone has the right to have different principles, I guess, right? Because it's a free world, right? But if we bring it to spiritual principles, I'm gonna use that term, is the common good, the common welfare. I don't know, Patrick. I don't know if at this point in my life because I think I spent so many years also trying to organize those who are not lost causes, but they are like not gonna move. And that brought so much, that spent me so much. I got spent in that a lot. I don't want to necessarily like only preach to the choir, but also I want to be realistic about my expectations, I guess, and just see things for what they are. I'm sure some people are good and nice, and also I need to know who I can speak with about some topics, right? I don't know if this is sort of like responding to your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose just wanted to add this little bit in here that to clarify, I think Alan's a great guy. I think
Yeah,
Thom Rutledge
yeah,
is a great
yeah,
guy. You know what I mean? And I think that one of the priorities I have is to just try and get
yeah.
real clear about
Where
these
you are.
things, because I think that for those of us that care about human beings, you know what I mean? Like we don't like what we're seeing, you know what I mean? And we want to respond to it in a way that is just, and loving. But there needs to be a get in the car, kind of get your feet moving dimension to it, and there also needs to be a dimension of education and
Yes.
so
No, I mean, I agree with this, Patrick. I agree. I fully agree. And also, that's what I was trying to say. Like, I guess my experience of like some of my sponsors who I love, and then they say some weird things that are so heartbreaking and so disappointing. And then Do I break up with them? Do I throw them in, do I throw them in the list of like the unwanted people? No, but I get to have my feelings about it. I get to have my disappointment. I may try to have a conversation and also kind of like move on. It's almost like what Bill was doing. He was trying to organize the people to become sober. That's like organizing 101, right? He would go to the hospitals. He would go to I never met the guy, but that's what the book says. And it was such an organizing 101 moment for me because like he moved on. If people are not ready, he moved on. And I would be historically one of those people who stays and gives you another fact and another level, you know what I'm saying? Trying to convince, trying to like, recruit. And we are not recruiting. I am not recruiting. I hope to God I'm not recruiting any longer. So I think for me, what came to mind, I was thinking about like the thing of like knowing the self. I guess knowing the self is one of my big purposes in life. So, I am worthy, I am God's child or the higher power, I have a space in the world, I belong. That's part of like knowing the self, kind of like step one, maybe, or like I know I have some issues, step one, and then, step 2 and 3, have a trustworthy community, uh, people you can speak with, people you can relate. Not that people who give you the yes, but people who a community. We need a community, I need a community. That's why I went all the way to London to be with my community face to face. That's why I went all the way to Ireland to be in community with my people. I really need that community.
Same.
And then,
I went pretty far to
yeah,
meet
I
you.
know.
So,
And then, the other thing, maybe that's step 2 and 3, I have a higher power. I can come to believe that there is a community, a higher power, and I'm gonna turn my will in life, or I'm gonna at least rely on them to tell them what's going on. And then I'll do the speaking up, or I'll do the inventory and say how I feel and what's been going on with me. And then maybe step 6 and on is I'm gonna take some actions. I'm gonna go to the marches, I'm gonna record things, I'm gonna comment, I'm gonna write, um, I'm gonna spread the word. I was thinking a lot about gaslighting. I rarely use that term because for a long time I never knew really what it meant. But some of the things I see right now, it's so like some of the things that I've been speaking about, many of us, hundreds of us have been speaking about, and now you see it recorded every place you go, you know? And it's like, oh wow, I was not crazy, you know? And I'm so sad that things are going like this. But we still get to take some actions.
you were talking a bit about protest as as an outpouring of love and as a practicing our principles in all our affairs. And I
Yeah.
think the resistance, and there's I heard a great point on a podcast recently, um this discussion about optics in protest. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
the onus is always on the resistance to make sure that our conduct is impeccable and that our optics are perfect. But not on ICE, not on the LAPD. You know what I mean? Not on power. The ones really committing the terror in this instance. You know what I mean? Like they
Right.
don't feel the need to clean up their conduct. And I mean,
Right.
I see. It's about love. That's why you show up. Working people show up, you know what I mean, with their signs and and get together with each other, and maybe they wear helmets because they're worried about getting their skulls cracked, you know what I mean, for being out there in the streets together. But that's what it's about for me. So that's
Right.
step 12.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And there has been an evolution. I mean, I went to the US, to California, to LA, in the mid 90s. It was crazy. So this today is not a new thing. It's been building up, and I also see the evolution of people, now the kids of those undocumented parents are grown and maybe they can take a bigger risk, they can get arrested perhaps. I mean, they may get snatched and deported even though they are citizens. But in the 90s, California had a governor that didn't want people. I mean, kids, children, there are documentaries. Elementary school children didn't want to go to school because they knew they would be taken away or their mom would be taken away. So they wanted to stay home with them. I mean, this is over 30 years. I mean, this is because I watched it, I saw it, I marched, I walked out. I went to high school in the valley, in Sand Valley. I used to live in Sand Valley. And we walked out against Prop 187, Pitt Wilson's 187, which won in California in the 1900s, right? So it's not like this is a brand new thing and everyone is a rapist and a criminal. I mean, this has been building. And the beauty of it is like people are saying, no, these are our people, this is our city. I mean,
Right, but it didn't start
amazing.
It didn't start with Trump and it's not going to end with him. And so we need to go deeper.
No, and I think that's why also, we may be powerless. And also, I'm not sure if conversations like this, perhaps, I don't know, and even in 12-step rooms could have helped. I mean, not that we're able to change the world, but to say things, to say, I know you believe this and I believe this, we don't have to, I'm not going to recruit some person or whatever, but just like be honest with the self and with others, right? Which I know many times I felt, I guess, like the only immigrant around my group. So I would stay quiet, which maybe was a mistake, but anyway, but yeah, we do our part, we do our part, and other heroes in history have done their part, right? They didn't just stay inside praying. Praying is excellent and it's great, and also people can take the streets because this is not private property, and because we believe that it's common welfare. If everyone is good, I'm also good. If everyone has access to all, housing, food,
Healthcare,
good jobs, healthcare, good salaries, respect, equity, equality, less problems. We're going to have less problems in the world, Spirituality and politics for me are very much connected. And it is hard to find people. So again, I'm so grateful that you bring things up in the podcast. I mean, I would say I only have two fellows who we do outreach on these things, because it is hard. It brings up a lot of things, so it might be an outside issue, let's say in a meeting, but we can do outreach,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Whenever I get just an inkling that there's something being left unsaid, in one of the rooms, I'm just like a heat seeker towards that person afterwards. Just like,
Yeah.
now we're doing the real meeting. Let's talk about it.